Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers and hope you're enjoying your weekend. Today, two different perspectives on the recently concluded session of the Kentucky General Assembly. Later, Democratic State Senator Reggie of Lexington will be here, but first, Republican House Speaker Pro Tem David Meade of Stanford is joining us. An historic surplus gave the legislature the ability to invest in raises, projects, higher education, and some new initiatives. Republican lawmakers also pushed through a conservative social agenda, including some of the tightest abortion restrictions in the country. Our first guest, Representative Meade, also pushed for some tight rules on those on public assistance. He didn't get all he wanted. Speaker Pro Tem Meade is joining us today, and we welcome you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you for having me, Bill.
How do you describe the recently concluded session of the legislature? The governor has said there were missed opportunities. Republicans have said a lot was done. Do you think this session moved Kentucky forward?
I think it did. I mean, you look at what we did, I think it was a very highly successful session, probably one of the most productive that I've seen, and probably the most productive in generations. I mean, we passed a $31 billion budget. We did tax modernization, which is going to put more money back in the pockets of Kentuckians. We did massive investments in infrastructure to make our roads and bridges better. We did unemployment insurance reform. We did public assistance reform, pro-life legislation, election security and transparency, and made churches essential services on top of all that. So there was a very productive session for us.
Let's talk about the tax reform. You have paved the way to eventually do away with the state income tax, although it will take years, and it's 40% of the state's revenue right now. Are GOP lawmakers confident that the economy will be strong enough that you can stay on schedule with the sunsetting state income tax in a few years?
We are. It's based on triggers, and that would be, it has to do with the surplus plus the amount of money that's coming in through sales tax and through other avenues for tax as we bring in income for the state. And so as each trigger is met, you will have a reduction of 0.5% in the income tax. The first trigger will have been met by July or January 1 of 2023. So we'll see a 0.5% reduction in income tax starting then. But as long as those triggers are met, then the reduction will happen. If they're not met, there will be no reduction.
So in other words, the revenue has to be there in order to keep the state afloat. I mean, if the revenue disappears, then those triggers will disappear.
That's exactly right. We're not just going to level it, bring out the income tax without having some type of investment coming back in.
You pushed for, in fact, you were the lead on this, in pushing for tighter restrictions on recipients of public assistance. Opponents said it would have cost more to do what you proposed than it would have saved. Are you satisfied with what did get through, even though you had to scale it back some?
I'm satisfied, yes. I mean, it's a start. This is the way legislation goes. You start with a very aggressive agenda and that you would like to see happen. It may not be the result at the end of the session through compromise and through working with others on it, and that's what happened. We got to a very good place, I think, at the end of this session with that bill, but I would like to have seen it a little stronger. But it's a good starting point. And we also got a task force in there that is going to look at all of our public assistance programs, also look at what can we do to help bridge the bridge insurance gap that we have where folks don't want to come off Medicaid because they're afraid they're going to lose health insurance. So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at child care and figure out ways that we can bridge those gaps as well. And if that task group feels that we need to have some stronger policies in place next time around, then we'll see that as well.
Are you convinced that there are a lot of people who game the system?
I don't know about gaming the system in terms of always trying to do something illegal. I think that there are quite a few folks right now on Medicaid who don't belong there, who don't qualify. The reason for that is right now hospitals do what's called presumptive eligibility, where they allow folks to give a statement on how much they make in income, and if they determine that the income is less than what would qualify, then they go ahead and put them on Medicaid. At that point, the cabinet is supposed to follow up and do actual checks on that, which doesn't always get done to satisfaction, and we end up with some folks on the rolls who may not need to be there. And right now, we worked with UK, the Gatton Academy, on some things in this reform package, and they estimate between about 150 to 200,000 are ineligible on Medicaid right now.
You gave raises, substantial raises to state police and to most state employees. Lawmakers also got a raise, whoever's elected next year, but teachers were not guaranteed a raise. How did the discussion arrive at that decision?
Well, that was a discussion that came about. There's actually quite a bit of money that has been placed into the districts that can provide raises if they see fit. The reason that happened is there was a lot of discussion that came along with the Superintendent's Association, the School Board Association, and like the school administrators as well, who said, don't mandate a raise. Make that money flow through the district and let each district decide on what's best for them. Because there were some districts in the last year or so they've given raises, some districts have not. So those districts that gave may say, okay, we don't need to give as much of a raise this year. So other districts may need to give a larger raise. But also what happens when we force them or mandate them to give that raise, there's also additional costs that come along with that. There's retirement matches, there's insurance costs that goes along with that, matches in insurance. And so some of those districts that are smaller may not be able to afford those increases. So by letting each district decide what's best for them is absolutely the way to do it.
There's a funding mechanism for charter schools in place now. Do you have any lingering concerns about charter schools hurting traditional public schools?
I don't, because the place that charter schools are going to come are your larger areas, those folks that parents who are really wanting that school choice, the religious leaders who are asking for that school choice. But also, it's not exactly accurate that hasn't been funded. A couple of years ago, we passed the Open Borders Act, and because charter schools are considered public schools, money would follow the child. So that has been funded for quite some time now. This bill simply, when you look at this bill on the finalization of it and what it does, it really creates a pilot program in Louisville and Northern Kentucky to see what those charter schools really do. We hear the argument on both sides that they're bad, and we hear the argument on the other side that they're good. And this is going to give us the opportunity to gather the data that we need to make an informed decision on it.
There were several pieces of conservative social legislation. The abortion restrictions are tight, virtually no exceptions. Was there a lot of consideration in how that bill was drafted?
There was that bill had been worked on for quite some time by Nancy Tate and some others in the legislature. That bill, of course, you have to look at other laws. There are other laws that exempt rape and incest. I know that was a big talking point while we were on the floor. But the bill primarily looks at the abortion pill first and foremost. And because of the Food and Drug Administration's policy changes over the last few months, now it's much easier to get that drug. As easy as just getting on the internet, ordering it, and having it be delivered to your home. Matter of fact, Representative Tate mentioned on the floor that she actually did that, made that order to see how quickly it would come. And just a few days later it came, no doctors, no prescription, nothing from a doctor in order to get it. So there was some regulations placed on that. And then, of course, the 15-week heartbeat bill was included in that as well.
And that is something that will have you watching the Supreme Court this summer on. Medical marijuana was not passed this time. It passed the House again. It didn't pass in the Senate, and Governor Beshear has indicated he may take some kind of action. He apparently is appointing a group to study it and so forth. You voted for medical marijuana 2 years ago and against it in this session.
Right.
What changed your mind?
Well, I think that last time we proved that it was a very difficult vote for some folks. We proved that we can take that vote in the House, pass it on the Senate. I felt that first and foremost there need to be some more support in the Senate. But also, since that time, I understand that there are some very good qualities, medical qualities, that are associated with marijuana. However, over the last year, I've had a lot of discussion with some of our hemp processors who feel that if we would change some laws for them to allow them to create the THC throughout the process of hemp, when they process that, there is a spike in the THC. And at that point, they are saying that if we will allow them to be able to use the product at that point, that they can do a lot of these things that were in that bill, and they can do it with hemp, which would be beneficial to not only our hemp farmers, but all of Kentucky that need that medicine. But also, we've already got the regulations in place for that. We've already got the processor in place. We've already got the growers in place. So it would be a much quicker process if we were to go that route.
What did not happen in this session that you would like to have seen, or that you think remains for next year?
Well, I really don't know of anything that didn't happen that I would like to see, other than we need to. I will say this: there is an issue here with bridging the gap, as I said, with child care and also with medical care for those on public assistance, and we need to figure out a way to help them transition off of that, because there are a lot of folks that want to go back to work, that want to increase their pay, but simply can't do it because they're afraid they're either going to lose their health insurance or they're not going to have the child care that they need.
So the Democrats push hard for pre-K education and thought that could have been funded. There was money. There's obviously money left over that could have been applied to that. Republicans had no appetite for that.
Pre-K is something that varies from district to district. There are some districts that are really ready for that and want the funding for that. There are other districts that are not, that don't have the staffing and are not capable of going ahead and getting a full pre-K program established. And so that's why you see a little bit of a mixed emotion, I think, when it comes to pre-K. I think it's very beneficial, and would love to be able to do something in the future, but we have to work with the districts and make sure that they can do what they need to do.
Governor Beshear recently announced another major employer, a car battery plant near Bowling Green's 2,000 jobs, 5,000 jobs in the E-Town area from Ford battery plants. Can we fill the jobs in Kentucky that are coming in?
Well, Kentucky is filled with great people and with the hard work ethic, and I think that we can. But that is part of the reason that we have implemented some of these things like unemployment insurance reform, like the welfare reform, is to try to help with that workforce participation. We're 49th in the nation right now, workforce participation. We were 48th in December, which we dropped to 49th in January, meaning one state has worse workforce participation than we do. So we need to increase those numbers to get that workforce ready. That's the primary thing that folks want when they bring a business to your state, is they want a ready, willing, and able workforce and an educated workforce as well. And so we've got a little work to do in that area, but I think by the time it's all said and done, yes, we will have the folks for that.
Speaker Pro Tem Meade, thanks for coming. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
Hope you'll stay with us on Kentucky Newsmakers. We'll get another perspective on the session from Lexington State Senator Reggie Thomas, a Democrat, when we come right back. We welcome you back to Kentucky Newsmakers, and glad you're with us. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. Joining us now is Democratic State Senator Reggie Thomas of Lexington. Democrats had a tough scenario during the session, being far outnumbered in both chambers. It was hard for their ideas to get traction, or in some cases to even be heard. Senator Thomas was one of the voices who spoke out as Republicans easily pushed through and then overrode vetoes on issues including abortion, how history is taught, transgender sports players, charter schools, and many others. And he is joining us here to talk about that. Senator, welcome. We appreciate you coming in very much.
Bill, it's good to be back again. Good to see you.
I suspect we'll get a little different perspective from you than from Speaker Pro Tem Meade when we talk about the session.
Well, that's probably likely, Bill. Probably likely.
How do you describe the just concluded session of the General Assembly? Do you feel that it moved Kentucky forward?
Bill, I would characterize this session, and have characterized this session, as one of missed opportunities. I think we missed a tremendous opportunity in the field of education. We could have provided universal pre-K to all students here in Kentucky, beginning at age 4. And Bill, what studies show over and over again is that the greatest impact in terms of having an educated society and educated workforce is not putting more money into higher education, although we need to put more money in higher education, don't misunderstand me, but to get children into school early. Teach them how to read, how to understand basic mathematical concepts, get them used to socialization with other children. That's where you get your biggest bang for your buck. And those children that get into school earlier tend to be healthier, tend to be better educated, have more satisfying lives. Just a whole host of good things happen when you get children to school earlier. And we had the money to do that, Bill, and we just didn't do that.
Kentucky would have been far ahead of most states in doing that had we done it, though.
Yes.
You would, and you wanted us to be there.
I've been an advocate of universal pre-K since I arrived in Frankfort. because it does a lot of good. You look at those states, Bill. If you take the states that have the best educational outcomes, pre-K through 12, all of them offer universal early child education. We could have. It would only cost us, Bill, $172 million. For a 2-year session. That's all it would have cost. $172 million.
And you believe that brings lifelong benefits?
I know it does. Just read what educational studies say about universal pre-K and what it does to children as they advance through education, their school years.
Senator, the budget did invest in raises and projects. State police got a substantial raise. Higher education did get tens of millions of dollars after years of cuts or level funding. Do you think that the spending plan was adequate given the revenue? If you set this issue aside that you've already said, pre-K.
Well, Bill, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. There were some good things we did. Again, I say we really missed the boat. We missed opportunities. I think the best thing we did was that we did value workers. You talked about the pay raise of 10%. We gave Kentucky State Police. We gave social workers an additional 10% plus an increase of $2,400. We gave state employees 8%. And in addition to all of those workers, state police, social workers, state workers, we set aside an additional 12% for the 23-24 fiscal year based upon a study that's going to be conducted by the Kentucky Personnel Cabinet about the significance and importance of each job. So that is the one good thing we did. We did show support for our state workers and valued them and gave them more money, except for teachers. It's like this session, we just thumbed our noses up at teachers and said you didn't matter. We didn't give teachers a pay raise at all, even though the governor in his budget called for a 5% pay raise for teachers.
Do you think that was purely political?
Bill, everything we do down there is political. It has some political motivation one way or the other. So yes, I think it was political. Absolutely, I do.
Speaker Pro Tem David Meade, who also appeared on this program, pushed for tighter controls on public assistance and got some of it. There was a compromise. Some of the things that he wanted did not happen in the eventual bill. Do you have lingering concerns about the crackdown on those who may be gaming the system, as he says he's concerned about?
Bill, I think that is an overused and underproven term. The testimony we received and what we saw was that the amount of fraud in food stamps, the amount of fraud in Medicaid bill is significantly less than 1%, something like 0.08%. I mean, the number of fraud cases that we've established in this state is the fraction is so small compared to the number of people, 108,000 people who receive those benefits. I mean, it's a very, very small fraction. Bill, what we did was basically, who we gamed were the poor people, in my opinion. I mean, the cutbacks in Medicaid, the cutbacks in food stamps. I mean, I said when asked about this question before, I said, if you're poor in this state, your road out of poverty just got more treacherous, after what we did with those House bills.
There were numerous conservative social issues that were easily passed by the Republican majority and then overridden when the governor vetoed those. Abortion has been effectively suspended in Kentucky for now.
First state in this country that has now eliminated abortion in the state. I don't know how to respond to that, Bill. I think I just fundamentally believe that women should have control over their own bodies. Women should be able to decide, how they want to, deal with health issues such as reproductive care. That's a woman's decision. That's not a state decision. That's a woman's decision, Bill. I don't think it's honorable to say now that, women don't have that choice here in Kentucky. Let me tell you what's going to happen, Bill. If you're wealthy or if you have some means, you're still going. And you find yourself in an unwanted pregnancy situation, you're still going to be able to get an abortion. It just don't happen in Kentucky, but you can go to some other state and get that done. But if you're poor or your resources are limited, and you don't want to have this child, because once you have it, the state's going to ignore you at that point. We want these women to have these babies, but then we don't want to take care of them, as we just talked about, with eliminating food stamps, eliminating Medicare. Now just think about that for a minute, Bill. We on the one hand said we're going to limit food stamps, we're going to limit Medicaid, and then we say on the other hand, but if you find yourself in a unwanted pregnancy situation, you got to have the child. Well, who's going to take care of the child, Bill? I mean, how's that child going to receive adequate food, adequate care, adequate housing, adequate education? Now we have a lot of social ills, Bill, here in this state, and we need to address them. But we're going about it in a very backwards way.
You also gave voice on the floor and elsewhere when there were some rules passed about teaching history. The legislature has prescribed readings now that should be taught, and how the past should be related to students.
Well, let's begin with the well-accepted fact that we don't teach critical race theory here in Kentucky in our public schools. We don't teach it anywhere in public schools across this country. So let's begin there, that it's not being taught, okay? So once you establish that fact, then what's your agenda, Bill? What's your agenda? Are you trying to change the narrative of history? Are you trying to say that some things aren't being taught because somehow they don't make people feel good? I mean, what's really the point here? And then, Bill, what makes it really bad is that you now have a statutory curriculum that says you're going to teach these 24 or 25 different books or treatises, and give the impression that this is what has to be taught in English class or history class. And if you don't teach it, then somehow you can be reprimanded or disciplined for doing that. I just think you have to trust teachers to teach, and if you're a parent and somehow your child comes back home with something that's questionable, you're always free to go see the teacher and say, why is this being taught? And have the teacher explain to you why the teacher is doing this.
Kentucky State University got financial rescue and a new board. Do you think the historically black university will take advantage of this moment and right its ship?
I do, and I think to some extent that Kentucky State University has gotten a bad rap, because the bottom line, Bill, is that Kentucky State University is an accredited university. It just got accredited 2 years ago. The Southern Association of Colleges and Schools that accredits universities gave Kentucky State University a passing grade. Said, okay, you are an accredited institution, so it's accredited. Okay, now it has some financial problems. Part of that was administrative. I don't deny that. But part of that, Bill, too, is the historic underfunding that not just Kentucky State, but HBCUs across this country have experienced, over decades and centuries. So, yes, I think Kentucky University will right its ship. I think it'll come out of this in good fashion. Not only did the state give it the money to get out of the hole, but it gave them additional $15 million to say, go forward and let's make some advancements.
Senator, a very limited medical marijuana bill was passed in the House. It did not in the Senate get through. Governor Beshear has hinted that he may try something, possibly an executive action. Are you supportive of that?
Oh, absolutely. People want it. People want it. And Bill, when you hear issues, and I don't want to get too far ahead of you, but when you hear statements made like there aren't the votes to pass medical marijuana or to pass sports gaming, I don't think that's really true. I think what people may be saying is there aren't sufficient majorities in the Republican caucuses to pass it. But I think if you brought that to the floor with the Democrat support on it, it would pass.
Let me ask you this, and our time has flown. This
I
is
know,
my
I
final
know, I know,
question.
I know.
How frustrating is it for you as a Democrat and to be in such a minority position in Frankfort that your ideas are seldom heard, and then come election time, there's little attempt to remedy that because the Democrats didn't file enough candidates to make much difference?
Well, Bill, let me say this, and I say this all the time. I ran for this position. I sacrificed to get here. I got elected. So I am not going to complain about the position I find myself in because I asked for this job, and I try to do this job. Obviously, at this point, particularly being in Democratic leadership, one of my responsibilities is to try to find candidates who can support positions that the Democrats can support Governor Beshear and the fine efforts he's done in his 2 years in office, and have more of an influential voice in our legislature. That's my role, Will. I can't speak for the House.
Do you want to be the floor leader?
Bill, right now, my focus is on getting Democrats elected. I've got to get some Democrats elected, state Senate Democrats elected this fall, and then we'll go from there.
Senator,
ask me again in December.
Senator, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
All right,
All right.
Bill.
And we'll take you up on it. We'll ask you in December.
Ask me again in December.